Hi everyone, my name's Darryl Panes, CEO of As Good As Gold Australia, and this evening once again I'm joined by my brother Brian, a partner at As Good As Gold. And tonight we interview Alasdair Macleod, advisor to As Good As Gold Australia. Good evening, Alasdair.
Good evening, Alasdair.
Good morning, good evening to you.
Oh, look, it's been a good morning and a good day, every day, all of this year, but in particular, Alasdair, I've got to say, the last couple of weeks, this industry has exploded. We thought it was busy before, and we've kept saying that, but this is out of sight. It really is. I tend to think a couple of weeks ago it started when mainstream media, for the second time, reminded everybody that gold had broken another record. And the next morning, Alasdair, it just went crazy and it hasn't stopped. So I think this industry is in for very exciting times, and so it should be. And more people now are becoming aware of the need to own precious metals. So it's, great times ahead. I wanted, if I could, I just want to talk for a moment about a major event that we've got coming up. And of course, it's an event that you're pretty much aware of course, Alasdair, unleashing the next economic financial storm. This is going to be the biggest event in this industry that has ever been held in this country. We have got we've got 6 keynote speakers. We keep adding to them all the time. But I just want to go through this a little bit so that people understand how big this event's going to be. We've got yourself, Alasdair, and anyone watching this interview, of course, would be very much aware of your qualifications. So, and everybody who views you and is aware of you holds you in remarkably high regard. Because this is an opportunity where everyone will get the opportunity to meet you in person. Rub shoulders with all of our speakers.
Absolutely.
And that's a different deal altogether. So we'll have yourself there. We've got Lynette Zhang, of course, over from Phoenix, Arizona, remarkable lady, and super qualified in this precious metal space. We've also got a gentleman by the name of Pat Mesiti. I remember watching Pat Mesiti many years ago when I was a much younger man, of course, and Pat was strutting around on stage and he had a wonderful story to tell. Very humble beginnings for Pat Mesiti, but he's now become a wealth acceleration expert. He speaks all around the world. He's on stage with some of the most qualified motivational speakers in the world. So he will be speaking at our event and providing some really incredible information. I spoke with Pat today and I know what he's going to be talking about, and it's going to be spectacular. And then we've got a gentleman by the name of David Hart. Now, most people would be very much aware of his father, Pro Hart. He was regarded as one of the finest, if not the finest, artist that Australia has ever had. Whenever you mention Pro Hart, everyone knows who you're talking about. Now, David is his son, and he's continued in the same vein. David is an amazing artist. I'm fortunate enough to have some of his work. It's just magnificent. He's written 3 books, I think. This is one of them now, Living Inspired. And David will be talking about, that's his life in this book. And he'll be spending time on stage discussing, what an entrepreneurship really means and living life to its fullest. It'll be a spectacular performance or presentation. And then, of course, we've got Brian and myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I won't spend too much time talking about what we're going to be talking about, but you've got 6 really great speakers on stage. I can't remember a time that's ever been emulated in this country. All on stage on the same day. So, and to top it off, Alasdair, we're going to have a draw, and it's all about, it's a cruise. It's a cruise. You're going to win. Someone in that room, one couple, is going to win a cruise. And this will be taking off from, because the boat's moored at Surfers Paradise. This is As Good As Gold Australia's motor yacht. It's a 4-bedroom, beautiful boat Brian and I will be on board. We'll have a captain on board. They're not going to rely upon Brian and myself to be in control of the steering wheel. But so we've got our captain on board. We will fly you to Surfers Paradise, and we'll fly you home as well, of course. But and once you're on board, we're going to cruise some islands, Stradbroke Island, and just go out cruising for a couple of days. We've got a jet ski on board, and you're going to have a lot of fun with that. All the food, drinks, everything will be provided, and you sleep overnight on board. Because as I said, we've got 4 bedrooms, so we can more than accommodate that couple on board. So we've worked it out. It's a $50,000 prize, and someone in that room is going to win it. Now, how do you enter the draw? It's pretty simple. A tub of silver coins will do it for you. A tub of silver coins gets a ticket. If somebody buys 5 tubs of silver coins, then they'll get 5 tickets. So I reckon it's the best chance to win a $50,000 prize ever. You've only got 150 to 200 entrants.
Yeah, just spend $50,000 on coins and you got it made.
Well, if you're going to do that anyway, and you get a $50,000 gift.
Absolutely.
Right. So, so it's spectacular. The whole day is going to be a massive event. And, what more can one say? But I'm going to ask you a little bit later, Alasdair, about the event anyway. But I do have a question for you. Now that we've
really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and now I've got a question for Alasdair. And it's a pretty important one, because we look at the last 12 months, Alasdair, here in Australia, I'm talking Australia and Aussie dollars, we have seen the gold price change from $3,188, this is over 12 months, to presently be trading at $4,156 an ounce. It's a 30.7% increase. And when we look at silver was $36.42. It's presently trading at $50.50. So it's up 40.4% over a 12-month period. I mean, the return on bank interest would be around about 5%. So anyone who's invested in gold or silver is looking pretty good at the moment. In fact, we're getting feedback from them all the time, and they are just so excited about the returns they've been able to generate. Now, so in your opinion, Alasdair, what is the cause of the rise, and will it continue throughout 2025 and 26?
Yeah, basically, we've covered this before. I think the point about the change in the gold price is that the change actually isn't so much in the value of gold, but more in the purchasing power of the currency you measure it in. I mean, the story in Aussie dollars is exactly the same, varying a little bit, let's say, with US dollars, sterling, euros, whatever, and even yen. I mean, in yen, the rise has been even more spectacular. But it's really about paper currencies, sort of quietly sinking. The pace at which they've been sinking has just increased. That's really what it is, Darryl. The thing that's interesting is that the members of the London Bullion Market Association, so far as I can see, are all very confused about this. But, they've had an awful long time of being able to, put it crudely, pump and dump, if you like, and make lots of money on the basis. And now that what they see is they can identify a certain amount of demand for gold, but there seems to be considerably more supply, both in terms of mine output and scrap, than the demand that they can actually identify. But if you actually look at it, what's happening is that a lot of this gold isn't even going through the market. It's gold which is produced in countries like China, Russia. Russia is now vying with Australia for the second largest mine producer by output. You've got all the Asian countries which produce gold. You've got maybe some of the BRICS who will be sending their gold to China, perhaps as Dory. No, I mean, it's not just, I used to say that, China's like Hotel California for gold. It goes in and never comes out. But we now have a situation where the whole of Asia is beginning to look like Hotel California for gold. And this is really the big change that has happened. Now, we do know that gold has been migrating from west to east for some considerable time. I mean, probably 3 decades now. But, this is almost on a new scale. So what's behind it? I mean, one of the things that we can't see is we can't track this gold through customs statistics, if you like. Now, customs statistics are, one assumes that they're reasonably accurate, though I think that is an assumption. But the big hole in them, as far as gold is concerned, is that customs statistics, by international convention, only records non-monetary gold. So, in other words, if a central bank, let us say, takes delivery from London, that's not recorded. It takes delivery from anywhere else, it's not recorded. So, I think putting all this together, what we see is, first of all that supply, which traditionally used to go through London, or a lot of it used to go through London,
Yeah.
is no longer there. And so, looking at statistics, it just become completely meaningless.
Right.
But I think the other thing about it, Darryl, is that what we are seeing is we are seeing the people right at the top, and I'm talking about central banks, I'm talking about the managers of wealth funds and all the rest of it. They'd all talk together. I'm talking about in the Asian space, if you like. They all talk together. They know what's going on. They know what each other is thinking. And I am pretty certain that they all recognize that the US economy is in a fearful debt trap,
Yeah.
from which politically there doesn't appear to be any escape. I mean, you can always get out of a debt trap if you take violent enough economic action,
Yes.
but nobody's prepared to do that. So, of course, the other thing that this has happened, and this is a very interesting dichotomy. The other thing that's happened, Darryl, is that the gold price has been rising with Donald Trump's fortunes ahead of the presidential election. I was looking at the odds this morning. I mean, basically, if you look at odds checker, I mean, don't look at opinion polls. They always get it wrong. But the one thing that does get it right is where people actually put money on the result, and that's in the betting shops. But looking at odds checker, they have Trump something like 3-5 on, and Kamala Harris 6-4 against. Now, clearly, unless there's a huge great fiddle at the ballot box, Trump is going to get in, and he's going to get in pretty comfortably. This is very worrying for foreign institutions, really on two levels. Firstly, they remember Trump from the past, and he was horribly unpredictable. And the last thing you want is unpredictability.
Yeah.
I mean, from their point of view. The second thing is that everybody in the world has become quite comfortable with the sort of socialist drift which we've all been tied up in, which is represented perhaps in an extreme form by Kamala Harris. Now, we're not going to get that, it appears. So the world is worried about this. The world is worried about the dollar. So where does it go? It doesn't actually particularly like the euro either. I mean, that's the Eurozone economy is turning into a bit of a basket case, quite frankly. And then, of course, you've got the problems with the yen. I mean, you don't want to buy a yen and get stuck with almost 0% interest rates. So you go and buy gold. I mean, this is what's happening. I think what we're seeing is a flight out of fiat currencies. And I don't think it's just the dollar, incidentally. I think it's also the euro and the yen. A flight out of those currencies into real legal money. And the flight is being done by people who do understand that real legal money is gold, silver, copper, metallic, whatever, but principally gold, and that paper currencies are subject to the faith that you have in the issuer of the paper currency. And that faith, frankly, is being challenged, particularly by the way in which the opinion polls have been going. So that answers the question on gold. But I'd also want to just make another point, and that is that if you look at equity markets in the States, with the exception of NASDAQ, which got a little left behind, they've been hitting new highs. And this is because domestic Americans take a completely opposite view about Trump than, very nervous foreigners. Trump is not the same man as he was when he was last president. I was actually tipped off about this quite some time ago because Nigel Farage, who knows him extremely well, said that this time round, Trump is not a sort of, bombastic shooting from the hip type so much. He's got advisors around him, and he considers what he says before he says it. This is a different, more professional approach to politics that we're seeing in Trump. And the thing that's fascinating is that he's attracted some pretty important people around him. I mean, Elon Musk, for example, who's a out and out genius. I mean, that's the only way you can describe it.
Sure.
Robert Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, who the most amazing military woman, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a very successful fund manager, and of course you've got his VP, J.D. Vance. This is an intellectual powerhouse, and I mean, I did a posting on my Substack yesterday where I said that this reminded me slightly of the situation which got Maggie Thatcher elected in 1979, because she got round her. So, I mean, we had the same sort of political background with a really far left-wing government in place under Jim Callaghan. In the same way that Biden and, the way in which Kamala Harris is going is very, very far left, if you like, really socialistic. But Maggie Thatcher managed to get elected, and this is May 1979, and she had surrounded herself with some very, very high-level intellects. Keith Joseph, for example. You had Lawson, you had Jeffrey Howe. You had various others of that ilk. And also in the economics profession, you had very few who actually understood Hayek rather than Keynes. I mean, Keynesianism was failing at that time. And but, it's so... the thought that occurs to me is that there are similarities, if you like, with the Trump situation. And rather like, I can't remember what foreigners thought of us at the time, but, today we've got this extra thing where foreigners are actually very frightened of the prospect of Trump and, buying gold to get out of the dollar, perhaps. But don't forget that the only reason that Maggie Thatcher managed to push through her policies was because there was a chap called Galtieri, an Argentinian, who decided to invade some islands which nobody had ever heard of, called the Malvinas. And Maggie Thatcher went and did something about it. And, I mean, she was walking on water after that. So she was able to push through her reforms. So the question now is, assuming that a lot of the chat about doing away with income tax and replacing it with, tariffs and so on, promoting business, all this sort of stuff, assuming that that is some sort of long-term vision rather than the short-term reality, which will have to be dealt with, then there is a very interesting potential here, assuming that Trump does actually get elected. But it's not going to necessarily be easy, because you've also got the deep state. he's going to have to reform that completely. But what I would say is that if this happens, then this, I think, would be very good news, because it means that America would, I'm not going to make specifics, but in general, I think America's approach of trying to hang on to control over the whole world is likely to soften very, very significantly and allow a world, if you like, which is away from America, to flourish. In other words, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the circus being run jointly between President Xi and Putin. A reduction in those tensions, I think, is extremely important. So that I would see as something that is potentially very, very good. But I would caution anyone in sort of, let's say, immediately thinking this is wonderful. We're a long way actually from seeing this actually coming into position, because getting rid of the deep state is not necessarily going to be easy. And the deep state actually is completely ruthless in terms of how it deals with politicians who they don't like. I mean, ask Robert Kennedy about his uncle and his father. I mean, I would hate to spread rumors, but yeah, there are conspiracy theories. But I mean, maybe less obviously on America's own home patch, but certainly the deep state has tried to arrange the world through triggering debt crises, through regime change, through getting rid of people they don't like. Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, two prime examples. That's the way they behave. That's got to change. And the challenge is to change that and hang on to your life. So anyway, I think I've probably said enough on that, but I think it is a very, very important point. But getting back to your basic question, Darryl, I think the thing that's driving gold, the relationship between gold and the dollar, is fear abroad of Donald Trump getting in, and the uncertainty that that's likely to create. Uncertainty, which I think is probably unwarranted. There will be different uncertainties. Don't get me wrong.
Yes. Well, of course, which will keep. I'm anticipating, and I've listened to some pretty qualified people, and they're indicating that this bull run could be very much like a 71 through to 1980 period. And it's pretty hard to imagine that it won't be over an extended period of time, because, I mean, debt levels are where they have never been before. And you just can't reduce that debt overnight. And until you do, unless you come up with a formula, you're not going to be able to provide a lot of confidence around the world. So that's still yet to be overcome, isn't it?
No, you're absolutely right. And of course, the problem with the debt trap, and this is, nobody's talking about this really, but the problem with the debt trap is that if you've got people who are refusing to buy your debt, then the rate of interest has to rise. It's as simple as, I mean, forget the inflation story. That's a separate issue. Yep. I mean, okay, it's all bound up in the same thing, but this is a separate issue. If you've got to continue to, I mean, Trump on his promises looks like being a spendthrift. Let's put it that way. So if you're a foreign creditor of America, you're looking at, higher interest rates, higher bond yields. So what does that do to the US economy? Well, for a start, it tightens the debt trap even more on the US government. And on top of that, you've got a whole load of zombie businesses in America. I mean, everything from big corporations to medium-sized down to, high street one-offs, who basically have geared themselves up in debt at zero interest rates and cannot afford higher rates. No. So you're looking at potentially the whole economy being crashed by higher interest rates.
Yes.
And then there is another aspect of this, and that is looking at the equity markets. I mean, the equity markets seem to be running brilliantly, on the back of this sort of story that I've just pushed out. The Trump is not quite such the bad guy, and the people who are surrounding him are all geniuses, and it's all going to rescue us, some whatever. And it's going to be very good for American business, because American business is going to be protected from foreign competition, etc., etc., etc. But the relationship between equity values and bond values is now so stretched that the next move up, which may have already started in bond yields, will trip up the equity markets big time. Now, that happens, you get a substantial fall in equity values. We're then talking about collateral for the banking system, which again is going to be having escalating bad debts to deal with, or what they euphemistically call non-performing loans. You can see that this crisis has not gone away. If anything, it's becoming clearer how this crisis is likely to evolve. And it seems quite simply that to sort of think in terms of inflation, to think in terms of recession and all the rest of it, is actually not looking at the right thing. The debt trap is the most important issue facing the US government.
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent Trump and his team of geniuses actually understand this. They're going to have to deal with it. No, I can understand that they're not going to talk about this ahead of the presidential election. I mean, they could actually reference it and say, look, the problem that the US people have, the problem that the American people have, is that by continuing to go down the Biden-Harris road, we are bankrupting ourselves.
Correct. Yes.
You need to stop voting for them and vote for reform of our finances, getting our economy on a proper track, etc., etc., etc. That I would have thought, actually, at this stage, would turn quite a lot of voters in favor of
so, wouldn't you?
Trump.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't rule it out, but that, of course, is a slightly different thing from actually dealing with the reality of the situation.
Yes. Mm.
And that reality is very hard to grasp when you find that the majority of your expense is mandated. In other words, it is there by law, and the government is legally bound to disperse things like Medicare, things like unemployment benefits, all that sort of stuff. But this could be the way in which Trump, for example, backs out of the Ukraine situation. I mean, that just makes so much sense.
Yes.
No, I mean, that raises so many other questions. The big question is, how can he back out of the Israeli situation? That, I think, is going to be a very, very interesting and difficult one to do. But you see what I mean? This is, this is one of these moments when some very, very big decisions are going to have to be taken. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, may we live in interesting times.
Yeah, do we ever? Yeah, I mean, wars, and I keep saying this, if you look back through the whole monetary system, you go back 5,000 years ago, wars destroyed countries financially.
Yeah.
It's incredible the amount of money that is consistently spent on wars, and you've got to debase your currency to do it. To walk away from that, I don't know how one does it, and Donald Trump would find that very difficult as well.
Oh, you have to sign it. Just about impossible. It is impossible not to walk away, but you've got fiat currency backed by zero. At least if you're under a gold standard, you've run out of gold, you run out of a way to fight your battles, right? Because you've got no money left.
Which is what happened to Rome.
Typically,
yeah.
But fiat currency, and since 1971, these battles just can keep on going because they just print whatever they like, right? So it's and that's another question for probably
another time. We've talked a bit about gold tonight. We talked a lot about gold tonight, but it's something interesting that we've read just recently, Alasdair, and you'd be very much aware of this. Russian central bank has announced it plans to purchase silver as a reserve asset. Now, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the first time that Russia's done this or considered this. My line of thought would be that if they do, then I'm sure they will go ahead with this project. Surely other BRICS nations would consider doing the same. These banks are massive consumers of gold currently. If they approach silver in a similar manner, then there would be nothing left. Yeah, I mean, and I think we've already been told that Russia has said they're going to buy as much as they possibly can. Whatever is surplus that's above ground, they're going to consume it. They think it's totally undervalued, and they think it would represent a great asset to have. Now, assuming they go ahead with this and other BRICS nations follow suit, what would that do to the price of silver in the immediate future and long term?
Yeah, and I mean, quite clearly, it would drive the price higher. But I think we've got to look at the motives of the Reserve Bank. I can see two reasons why they would do this. The first is that in the longer term, however that is, whether that's 1 month or 10 years, they probably see the need for coinage. So they would need to acquire. I mean, you could either do it as a central bank reserve asset or something part of a wealth fund or whatever. But they would need to acquire stocks of silver in order to be able to do that. So I think that's one thing we ought to bear in mind. I think the other thing is that one of the problems that the Reserve Bank actually faces, and that is being banned, if you like, from owning fiat currencies by us. So she can't even put, if you like, currency, her own reserves. She can't actually get her own reserves up, by increasing dollars, increasing euros, or whatever it might be. I mean, she's probably got enough Chinese yuan that she might be comfortable with. And I think, therefore, that she's probably doing what we're all doing here. I mean, the three of us, not understood, if you like, by the majority of people, thinking, well, we're not going to stick just to fiat. What we will do is we will also accumulate monetary metals. And, part of the answer probably is that the Russian gold mines can't get the stuff out of the ground fast enough in order to satisfy the Reserve Bank's demand for gold. So I think there are a number of reasons that are probably specific to the Central Bank of Russia, rather than, let's say, necessarily the beginning of a trend of other central banks deciding to go and buy silver. I mean, I wouldn't rule other central banks buying silver out. I wouldn't rule that out. But I think the Russian Central Bank is in this rather peculiar position of really not being able to pad out her reserves with fiat currencies.
Okay. It'll be interesting to watch because they are powerful players in the marketplace, that's for sure. And if the decision was made to follow suit, if it was, then there simply would not be enough above ground silver to accommodate. Yeah.
Well, that's right. I mean, if I can just add, Darryl, the Silver Institute reckons there's been a supply deficit for the last 4 years. And the people in the industry, or like in the LBMA or whatever, will say that, there's plenty of above ground stocks, in the form of, held by investors and strategic funds and all the rest of it, so that there isn't really a shortage. Those will be drawn down on. But the problem you have with that sort of approach is that investors and holders of stocks in reserve, they can see that this is a situation where, if they let stuff out, they're not going to get it back. So what do? You just hang on to it even more tightly.
Yeah. No, I agree, 100%. Right.
Yes, well, we do have a few minutes for the next question. I love about these interviews is that we really cover a lot of information, but we have to do it in a short period of time, unfortunately. But my next question is all about what happened really to the lead up, but what happened at last week with the 2024 BRICS conference. So, I mean, the lead up was pretty spectacular. A lot of people saying this and saying that. Some of it has definitely come to fruition, or looks like it will come to fruition. I'm sure. I certainly see Russia moving ahead in gold and silver down the track. But anyway, Alasdair, the last week we saw the final messages coming out of the 24 BRICS conference. Could you give us a summary of what took place and comment on any changes that you see with reference to money and economics for the future?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, there's absolutely nothing on the money front. They were saying basically there were two things that perhaps we were looking for. One was a trade settlement currency of some sort. Now that has been effectively ruled out. And that's realistic because you have to come up with something which is better than the dollar which you're replacing. Otherwise, people won't use it. It's as simple as that. And that really needs you to have something which is gold backed. And I'm not sure that that would ever make the cut with with the existing BRICS membership, particularly with India being very much against it.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. But also, while we're talking about currencies, the overall political background was one of extreme nervousness on two levels. Firstly, with China and Russia concerned about not provoking America unnecessarily. America, from China's point of view, she's always had the strategy of let your opponent make all the mistakes. And the Russians have been doing this brilliantly as far as the Chinese are concerned. So, just let them carry on making the mistakes. Don't suddenly sort of get aggressive and, get them to sort of suddenly wake up and think, hold on, we've got a better way of dealing with this. So that's on that level. The other level of nervousness are amongst BRICS nations, the other nations that attended who are looking to join. And their nervousness is that America, could well boomerang back on their trade, or if they owed dollars, and most of them owed dollars big time, which maybe to the IMF. But I mean, the thing is that the IMF is controlled by the Americans. The Americans can call in the shots, so you don't want to upset your bank manager, as it were. And on top of that, of course, those Americans are not above creating regime change in foreign nations. So, there's a lot of nervousness about how this would be approached. So you can see that while some people were getting quite excited about the whole thing, they're beginning to see a bigger picture and thinking is immediately going to happen. No, this is something which, as far as China and Russia are concerned, is likely to take some time. They're going to respond to events, not create them. And the other thing, which is very interesting, so that deals with the money side. They are continuing to work, incidentally, on having a sort of SWIFT alternatives, and all the bells and whistles that are required for that, and the ability for banks to settle in currencies with each other without using the dollar, still a work in progress, etc. So that's all rather boring. The other thing, which I don't think has been really noted, is that they have created a new class of membership, which they now call partner status. We might call it association, an associate member of BRICS, but this is, they call it partner, which is exactly the same thing. It means that all these new countries can gradually sort of, assimilate themselves into a sort of common BRICS approach, if you like, to trade. And it's a huge, great free trade area is really what it boils down to. And importantly, the nations which we haven't had an official announcement so far as I can see, but there was a list leaked. And they're talking about Indonesia, huge country in terms of population and GDP, talking about Malaysia, they're talking about Thailand, and they're talking about Vietnam. So, that the whole, well, not the whole of, but the majority of the people in Southeast Asia, particularly with, let's say, ethnic links into China, will be joining in partnerships, in partner status. Other ones which are interesting are Turkey, which is already, as we know, a member of NATO. They're going to have to take a decision at some stage. I think they have actually taken the decision to basically, refocus their future into the Turkic nations in Central Asia. So there's that one. And another interesting one is Nigeria, which again is a very large economy with large oil reserves and all the rest of it. There are a few minor ones in there, like Uganda, for example, which, it's sort of going to be a communications hub into the Congo, so far as I can see. So what we're now looking at, I think, if you include these partner nations, we're going to be looking at something like almost 70% of the global population in BRICS.
It's huge.
And on a purchasing power parity, we're going to be looking well over 50% of global GDP.
GDP, yeah.
Well, yeah. So, suddenly we're a minority, boys, We're the small fry.
Yeah.
This is, and I think this might become a bit more obvious in the coming, I don't know, years. But I think, to me, those are the two standout things. On the money side, there is a view, I think, that this is not something that is going to be immediate. If you're going to replace the dollar, that's a 30 to 40 year project. I mean, this is not instant. And interestingly, the latest numbers that I have seen, international settlements are roughly 50% dollar. But the one that's really fallen, and this is interesting in terms of share, is the euro. That's really declined. I mean, that's declined, I think, from an estimate of about 39% down to 21%. So, this is a gap being filled by other currencies. So the euro, it's interesting. I think we need to think that one through a bit. I haven't yet, so I'm not going to comment too much.
On this subject, and I want to put a statement to you, and I obviously like your feedback. This on the subject of India, and India obviously is not ready to go to a gold-backed currency or something that Russia was talking about and things like that. I see India as an interesting country because you have a look at China, and for the last 25 years, they've boomed. They've absolutely boomed. It's only been the last 3 years where their deficits or their debts are creating a problem. But they've boomed for 25 years. I mean, Australia doesn't have any exports anymore in manufacturing. They're all gone. China does it all. China is the export nation of the world for manufactured goods. So, as I see it, and I'm not an economist like you are, but I see India thinking, China's done all of this, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and they've done it with fiat currencies, paper currencies, right? I'm now President Modi, and he's saying, I'm thinking, I want a fair bit of this. I want to have a go at that. I don't want to see a gold standard come in because a gold standard will limit my growth. Because of course it will limit growth, but it's limited growth under real money, not this paper stuff that's out there. But am I being a little bit facetious, or am I, in your opinion, closer to the mark?
I think you're quite close to the mark. Bear in mind that the Indian financial system has really been born out of the UK's financial system, And the contacts, if you like, at the highest level have always been through the Bank of England and the Reserve Bank. And so they have tended to promote Keynesian policies. And or put it another way, it was Keynes who advocated the use of budget deficits to stimulate economic activity. So you can see that, as far as the elite in India is concerned, freedom to use the currency for economic means, economic management, they really believe in it. More so than certainly other nations within BRICS. China, I heard a criticism of President Xi, that he had a Hayekian approach, in other words, a sound money approach, poor delusion man, was the sort of byline, and they won't manage to deal with the decline in GDP growth and the crisis here and the crisis there. You can all the usual stories, but no, basically, Brian, you are right, that India, has this belief, if you like, in using credit to manage the economy. And it's completely unnecessary. I mean, basically, if they free up the economy, stand back and let businesses do what they do, it would grow extremely rapidly, and all the more so if you had sound money.
Yes.
I tell you one thing: sound money would unlock if they actually put the rupee on a proper gold standard. Then you find that all the sort of the farmers and everybody else and the small businessmen and all the rest of it who save in gold and 22-carat gold bangles and all the rest of it, we'll stop buying gold and just be quite happy to have the paper currency equivalent, because that's what the rupee would become. It would become a gold substitute. And that would, the freeing up of the necessity to hoard to protect yourself from governments debasing the currency is, an enormous economic positive.
Look, just finishing off, you've mentioned in a couple of episodes that we've done with you that Russia could go onto a gold standard. Their economy is extremely good, and they've got enough gold in the ground and also above ground. They could, if they wanted to, go on a gold standard. Do you think they're still thinking that way, or do you think it's been postponed just a bit?
I think they're thinking that way, yes. I think is the case basically with certainly Russia, certainly China, and very, very likely many other nations who are very, very close to their way of thinking and their understanding of the problems in the West. I think there is the belief that fiat currencies will fail. Now, if that happens, then you have to protect your own currency, basically, by putting it on the gold standard. I mean, this is the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
Of course, whether they will get it right is a separate question. But I think there is no doubt that this is why China, Russia, and various others have been accumulating gold. I mean, they're going to, at some stage, they're going to have to protect their own currencies, and they must be ready to do so. From their point of view, if Trump gets in and the whole thing starts blowing up, this could be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But as far as the domestic Americans are concerned, if Trump gets in, and increasingly, this is likely to be deferred. So pays your money, it takes your choice, I think.
All right, Darryl. I've got no more questions, so you might want to
Okay.
talk about November 30th, or finish off on November 30th, or whatever.
Well, yeah, I would like to ask. I'd like to ask Alasdair this: that we've got the event coming up. It's just in a few weeks' time now, and I've spoken about who's going to be speaking there. But Alasdair, just very, very quickly, what would you expect? What if you were talking about this event to anybody? What would you suggest that they're going to be? Why will they benefit out of being there? What are they going to learn? Why should they attend this event?
I think they would learn probably the most important lesson which they have yet to learn, and that is about the difference between money and credit. If you think that what you have in your, your wallet or in your bank account is money, then you are absolutely wrong. It is actually a very dangerous assumption. In these times, the assumption is getting more and more dangerous. Now, each individual takes their own decision and their own circumstances to reflect their own circumstances. But they need to understand why it is that gold appears to be rising. It's not. It's the value of currencies falling. And there are various stages which this goes through. First of all, the foreigners will recognize it with the currency and they will sell the currency. Currency is always credit. I mean, I know that you get economists now who say, no. But the definition of credit is it's matched by a debt. Just look at a central bank's balance sheet. On the liability side, currency is a liability. And the liability is to you and me, even though we got a bit of paper in our pocket. That's actually no different from having a bank deposit at the central bank. I mean, obviously, with the bank, there's an extra sort of little bit of risk on top, that your bank might not honor your central bank's issue. So I think the first thing is really to understand that. When you have grasped that message, there are various other aspects of your life which are very much affected and follow from it. If, let us say, we're in a situation where the government can realize that it's got a problem, it can defer, if you like, the death of the fiat currency. Bearing in mind that fiat currencies always die. I mean, that's been the history of money and credit for millennia. If you've got a government which actually tries to deal with this situation, not necessarily going on a gold standard, then the pace at which your currency is going to decline will probably slow. If, on the other hand, government does what they did in Germany in 1923, do what the people seem to want, give them the money, don't raise taxes because nobody can afford to pay them, which is roughly where we are today, then under those circumstances, you're going to see a collapse in the currency. So, this is something, again, which people need to judge for themselves, but they need to have the information to be able to do it. Yeah. And I think in a nutshell, that's what I want to try and achieve.
Thank you for that, Alasdair. And I believe we will achieve that. And we've got the right people to present the case.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A good assortment of people.
Look, if our viewing audience, in particular Australians, would like to attend that event, best thing to do, click on the link in the video description, and that will take you to Eventbrite, where you can purchase a ticket if you'd like to be there. I've got to say, the difference between, even though we get wonderful support from our viewing audience, they love connecting with As Good as Gold Australia, in particular when we interview people like Alasdair Macleod, but to go and see an event live, it's just another level. And Brian and I made a decision to do that 40 years ago, whenever we just created the opportunity to go and see those people. And it's a little bit like Charlie Tremendous Jones. People you meet and the books you read, meet the person. Yep. So you've got to put in the effort to go to see the person, shake their hand and communicate with them, and it raises you to another level.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah. So we're really looking forward to this. I think it'll be I know it'll be a spectacular event. But
and I look forward to meeting everybody too.
Yes. Oh no, fantastic. And so look, I know we've had wonderful support. Our viewing audience is terrific. They love it when we interview Alasdair Macleod. It's like Charlie Jones says, the information you get back is amazing, and you benefit in the process. You become a better person. So thank you, Alasdair, for your ongoing support, and to our viewing audience, we thank them because they continue to support this channel. So it's a two-way street. We believe what we're offering is value, and they provide us with value by supporting us. So really appreciate it. I guess until next time, I can only say, let's all stay well, let's all stay focused, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye for now.